we're going to start with our normal 10-minute meditation. I ring the gong once to let us know we're starting. I ring the gong twice to let us know it's over. But before we go into the meditation, I want to read you some quotes from some mystics and then something to give us something to ponder as we are meditating. So here we go. This is from the 9th century Zen master Huang Po. Bodhi, now Bodhi is enlightened mind. So Bodhi is no state. The Buddha did not attain to it. Sentient beings do not lack it. It cannot be reached with the body, nor sought with the mind. All sentient beings are already of one form with Bodhi. All sentient beings are already one form with Bodhi. Now, here's the 20th century Hindu sage Ramana Maharshi, and he's talking about the self, but he's talking about the Atman, the true self, not the ego self. And in English, it's always written with a capital S so we can recognize that. Here's what he says. There is no reaching the self. If the self were to be reached, it would not be the self. It would mean that the self is not here and now, but that is yet to be obtained. So I say the self is not reached. You are the self. You are already that. So here's a Zen master from hundreds of years ago, a Hindu sage from the last century saying exactly the same thing. Here's in the Quran, we get a little bit of a more theistic perspective. Whithersoever you turn, there is the face of God. And Ibn Arabi, the great 12th century Sufi master, writes, my eyes have never gazed on other than his face. My ears have never heard other than his words. So look around you. You see the face of God? Listen, not just to my words, but any other sounds in your environment. Maybe you can hear some birds outside or a dog barking or a car going by. You hear they're all the words of God. Do you recognize that? So as we're meditating here, oh, sorry, somebody, oh, that was an email flashing. As we're meditating here, if you don't see God everywhere that you look, if you don't hear everything's the word of God, if you don't know that you are Bodhi or the self, why not? Why aren't you enlightened? All these mystics say right here, right now, that nothing to be attained, just something to realize about what is the truth right now. So why don't you realize that? So you ponder that as we meditate here for 10 minutes, okay? So, what did you discover? Why aren't you enlightened?
Well, I'm too wrapped up in form, and I'm not able to go beyond form at this point. And even sounds, I seem to label them, and I feel that those are blocks to me going to realize my true essence.
So you're too wrapped up in form, but Ibn Arabi said that form's not a problem. The Quran says form's not a problem. Everywhere you look is God. How could you be too? That means you're too wrapped up in God.
I'm not able to go beyond the essence.
You're not able to go beyond the essence.
To the essence.
Oh, to the essence.
Yes.
Well, do you think there's something other in the form than it is what is right there?
I think there's a quality that I'm missing, I'm overlooking.
Here's Huang Po again. Our original Buddha nature is void, omnipresent, silent, pure. It is glorious and mysterious, peaceful joy, and that is all. Enter deeply into it by awakening to it yourself. That which is before you is it, in all its fullness, utterly complete. There is naught besides. That which is that which is before you is it, in all its fullness, utterly complete. There's nothing missing. Now everybody's looking. I hope you're all looking now at what's before you. What's before you is utterly complete. There's absolutely nothing missing. You're not missing anything. And there's nothing beside. There's no essence beside what you're seeing. So I'm trying to point this out as directly as possible with these teachings, because this is one of the mistakes we make in our meditation and our practice and all that. We're looking for something else that is not here and now. So in that very looking, we are missing what is here and now. We think that well, there must be some change of experience, something that I'm just not seeing. You know, when I was on my path, I thought enlightenment was going to be like I would see the Platonic forms behind the forms, the sensory forms. You know, that like literally curtains would lift and there would be the Platonic forms. You know, that would be enlightenment. No, that's not it. This is why it's so mysterious. It's not like other things where you're missing a piece of a puzzle, you know, and you find the piece of the puzzle and it all fits together. There's nothing missing in the present moment. All we have to do is realize it, and realize it is itself nothing's gained, nothing's accumulated. We're going to keep talking about this, so just ponder that. Though it's not that you're too wrapped up in some form, in the sense that that forms are ultimately a problem. It's something about the forms right here, right now. It's that you're not missing some essence about them. There is something you're not realizing about them. That is true. But it's not about something's wrong. Something's wrong. I'm looking at a clock here. No, I don't see the essence of that clock. If I could only see the essence of that clock. Oh, it just went from 26 to 27. Oh, that was God winking at me.
Am I putting my own meaning on it, and that's what's obscuring it?
That might be. This is what we're going to be doing here. trying to discover what is the obstacle. So for instance, tell me something, is there something you can hold up that you're looking at? Like I have a gong striker here. Can you? Yeah. Okay. Well, it's a glass of water. Okay. So what is that?
It's a container that holds liquid.
Yeah. So you are now projecting onto the face of God, a container that holds liquid. So maybe it's you're taking the distinction and the name, the label, to have a reality that doesn't have, and maybe that is what's not allowing you to see what it really is, which is the face of God. Do you speak any other languages besides English? No. Okay. Somebody out there speak, let's see, Spanish. What was, well, we don't know. Never mind container, but it's the liquid. Is that water in there?
As to my understanding.
Yeah, yes, right. Yeah, yeah. I'm not trying to play tricks on you. Okay, so that's water, right?
Yes.
So, but in Spanish, it's not water, it's agua.
Agua, yes.
And in, I don't know, Japanese, or I don't think Aromi's here. She could tell us what it would be, and Abdullah could tell us what it would be in Arabic. See, in different languages, it's different. It's not water. Water is not intrinsic to that. I mean, the word, the label, the thought, water. Different languages have different things. So if we looked at that, and the thought, the mind, the mind's job is to say, oh, that's water. Okay, that's what the mind does. But can we keep looking at that, let the mind say, oh, that's water, and then let the thought water go? And is there the possibility of having a naked experience of that, unmediated by thought?
It's just seeing.
Just seeing, just hearing, just thinking. Even thoughts themselves, if we don't buy into them, they're just thoughts. It's just thinking. There's a famous story of the Buddha. A guy comes up to the Buddha, and when the Buddha's making his rounds for his begging rounds in the morning, and he says, I got to talk to you. I got to get enlightened right now. And the Buddha says, well, why don't you come back at lunchtime? You know, I'm begging my food here. And he says, no, there may not be time. I got to get enlightened right now. So the Buddha looks at me and he realizes he's ready. Now, this is very important. People are ready for certain teachings. He realizes this guy's ready. He's so desperate for the teaching. He says, okay, here's the whole teaching. In what is seen, there is nothing but what is seen. In what is heard, there is nothing but what is heard. In what is tasted, there's nothing but what is tasted. And in what is smelled, there's nothing but what is smelled. And in what is touched, there's nothing but what's touched. And what is thought, there's nothing but what's thought. So this is just another variation of it complete right here, right now. We read into it in a certain sense more than is here, and that it's its true nature. So one of the things I suggest to you is in meditation, and are you a visual person, auditory, what, visual?
Visual.
Okay, so I would suggest you make a meditation out of a glass of water, any old object, doesn't matter what, and put it down in front of you when you meditate, and then just let your mind think whatever it wants to think about it, and just try to and let those thoughts go, and keep experiencing what's before you, and see if you can't get to have an insight, at least a naked experience of that experience without the labels on being piled on top of it. It's not about suppressing the thoughts or whatever. You just they'll self-liberate. You just let them go. Your mind might think, oh, well, it's not really water, it's H2O. Oh, that's clever, but no, that's just another thought. You see, right there, that nothing's changed. If I say H2O, I'm still, the naked experience is remaining the same. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. See, this is excellent. We're discovering through this practice of what is the obstacle. Anybody else got a report to make?
I'd like to support your, well, there's a saying that I have found very helpful, and that is that which is always here. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for that which is always here, can't be absent.
Yes, yes. Listen to yourself. You're looking for that which is always here.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
How can you miss it?
Well, it's not so difficult.
Well, maybe it's the process of looking. The energy you're putting into the looking is the problem.
Yeah. You could say in meditation, it's the absence of looking.
Yes, yes, that's a very good way to start a meditation. An absence of looking, an absence of seeking for anything.
Mhm.
The seeking itself is perhaps is the problem.
Mhm.
But it's good to remind yourself it's already here. That's an excellent thing to start any meditation, any practice with. A reminder that, because that at least will try to get you into the present moment, not waiting for something to happen. And the more fully you can do that, the more you can let go of all those dualistic thoughts about, well, this isn't right, I should be da ba do ba da. The greater the chances are that an insight will happen, a direct insight will happen. We can't make insights happen, by the way.
Mhm.
We can just, in a certain sense, prepare ourselves by a ceasing and a surrender. So whenever we're trying to force something, we're trying to force it. That's always interfering.
Well, and it also implies that it's not already here.
Yes, exactly, and exactly. It implies it's not. So if you can, and it's subtle. You're right, Wesley. It's not easy in the sense that, or it is easy. It's so easy, like Simone Weil says. There's an easiness in our salvation that's more difficult than all our efforts. So, but if you notice that yes, the act of looking, the act of seeking implies that it's not here. Oh, then can you relax that? Can you drop that? Can you be here? This point, it's not something else to do, a trick. The instruction is a little bit paradoxical, but it's to stay with it and allow
Here's
it.
another saying for you, that you are presence pretending it's a personality.
Well, you can be presence and a personality as long as you don't confuse them. The
Yeah,
personality is a form of the presence. It's not
right.
something separate from the
It's a
presence.
pretend form.
Well, it's to pretend that that's all you are as a person. If you're pretending all you are as a personality, then you're like an actor who's forgotten that you're playing a part,
Mm.
and then you think you're the part you're playing, and that's a problem. But you can certainly be, an actor and play a part and play it well, and
Mhm.
not lose track of the fact of what's going on. So personality is not a problem. Personality is the form in which the divine appears. That's why mystics have the great mystics have very different personalities. And people wonder about that. Well, how come they don't have the same personality? Because because every form, as Ibn Arabi says, the Sufis say, God never repeats himself. So every form is a little bit different, a little bit individual, a little bit new. It's never the same, never exactly the same. And it's supposed to be that way because what's underneath is unchanging, eternal,
Mhm.
changeless.
Hi, Joel.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good.
So okay, in pondering this, what came up for me were a few words: distraction, vigilance, and then for me, I'm an energy, like I have a lot of energy. It's really, I think for me, a key thing is being able to relax into into life, into now, into what's appearing now. Just finding the quiet to be able to do that, and that's the distraction and the vigilance. The vigilance being the me protecting my ego, whatever that is, that protective instinct, in us humans and me, you know. And yeah, it's finding the ability to relax enough, to be quiet enough to allow direct experience, really.
What you can learn to do, I learn in quotes, is to discover the spaciousness out of which thoughts arise and into which they pass. And you can learn to relax. And I put these in quotes because this is all this, it sounds like a lot of doing, even though relaxing is a kind of doing. But you can discover how to just be present in that space. And the thoughts, just like a river, can just go. And they're on the periphery.
Mhm.
They're on the periphery. And they're on the periphery of a limitless openness. Uh, it's impossible really to describe. And it's difficult to recognize because it isn't a kind of thing. It isn't some super alert state or or blissful state or anything. It's alert and it's clear and it's pleasant, but it's not like fireworks going off. But the more you can allow yourself to be there, the grasping and the pushing away and all that stuff that agitates the mind starts to on its own just starts to fall away. It starts to subside because again, it's like being in the pool. You learn you don't have to protect yourself all the time. You don't have to protect the ego all the time. You can actually let the ego itself start to dissolve away. And again, the sky doesn't fall in or anything. And it actually starts, you feel it feels good. It starts to feel, it's not jumping up and down, Wood, but a kind of touching into a kind of really deep, profound peace and happiness.
Yeah.
And that's what then motivates us, pulls us wanting to go deeper. And actually, we don't even have to go deeper. That's just artificially getting rid of distractions because that's present all the time. And that's what we want to actually discover. Oh, we get flashes of it in meditation and stuff, but then we also start, I know you spend a lot of time outdoors and you probably have actually outdoors because outdoors you can get, some of the lose your distractions because of the majesty of the mountains and the, environment. So it's really about the less, again, less doing. Well, you said some meditation you're doing a lot of words, or a lot of words involved with it.
Mhm.
Are you doing it under the guidance of somebody that's
Mhm.
practiced a lot of words? Okay, well, I don't want to, if you're doing guidance, I don't want to interfere with what you and your teacher are doing. But you might just consider or talk to your teacher about it. Maybe it's too many words. Maybe you want to do or spend at least as much time doing. They try to do a wordless practice.
Right. Joel, through the years, I'm a long-term practitioner, right?
Yes.
Many years. And I've gotten some really wonderful glimpses. Really long-lasting glimpses.
Yes.
But it's sort of a matter of like just continuing that relaxation. I think
Yes.
it's just a habit of my mind.
Well,
You know,
yes, in a certain
breaking those habits, it's like it's a lovely, I mean, it is blissful. I mean, it's pretty blissful when you get to that really quiet
right.
place. Um,
Yes, and the thing is, we want to recognize when we get to the quiet place with support, with like a meditation practice and all that. That's great. But we want to get to the place where we realize we don't even actually need any meditation practice, because that's the place you can't get away from. That is the face of God. That is where the words of God come from, and the forms come from, and everything. You know, what's before you is it perfect and complete. Doesn't require any. Doesn't ultimately require any kind of meditation
or any effort.
or
You see that?
any effort whatsoever.
I'm the
That-
queen of effort here.
Well, Ramana Maharshi said, your make no effort. Your effort is the bondage.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you talked about a practice, a lot of words. Simone Weil, a great Christian mystic of the 20th century. No, it wasn't Simone Weil. I'm sorry. It's Eddie Hillesum, 20th century. She said we have to become as quiet as the falling rain and the growing corn. Simple, maybe. I think the word was simple.
Retreats really help with that, don't they? Thank you. I really like retreats really do help with that.
They
Just to be
certainly
able
do.
to long-term go into a quiet.
And I think people who go on, retreats periodically, I think you reach a kind of plateaus where yes, you come back out of the retreat, and you have a busy life and all that, but you never come back to quite the same kind of madness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You reach this kind of plateau, and then you don't, fall from there. So anyway, go ahead.
I'm going to get to go on a 3-week retreat this spring, and I really am looking forward to having a extended period of time of quiet.
Wow, sure. Where are you going?
On the Lost Coast of Northern California. It's a
Oh.
wilderness area. There's an inn holding, and there's one of my teachers is friends with the people who own it, and I'm going to get to go for a 3-week retreat.
Terrific. Wow. I envy you.
I know. I wish I could bring you.
Anyway, yes, it's going to be great. I'm sure it's going to be great.
And I hope I find that. I hope I can find, whatever. I don't know what.
No. Don't hope you can find nothing. Let go of
Exactly.
that.
Thank you.
Let go of that. No.
Thank you.
Hey, no, really, go on the retreat with a don't know mind.
Yeah.
Don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. And the mind to say, "Oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to all these expectations you're setting up." And I hope it isn't like that. I hope just don't know. You don't know what it's going to be like.
Right.
Beginner's mind, total beginner's mind.
Yeah.
Anytime anybody goes on a retreat, you should get there. The minute you step onto that property with the retreat, beginner's mind. Just drop everything. Don't know. Be open. Be like that. The blank slate that God can write on.
I feel trepidation, actually. I'm not, because I don't know what's going to happen.
That's right. Well, let go of that. Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Isn't part of this also to see that you're surrounded by, I'm surrounded by a world that I have put together myself. It's not known really, it's imagined.
Well, at one level, you're absolutely right. What's imagined is the way you've divided up the world and then made correlations. And this is why different people in different societies live in very different worlds. So if you go down to the Amazon, rainforest in Brazil, and if you spend any time with the people down there, you'll see that they live in a completely different world than you live in. I mean, they have all sorts of beings. The forest beings are layered with realms of different sorts of spiritual beings and all sorts of things. And certain animals shapeshift and talk, and so it really, it sounds insane to a Westerner, as I'm sure they came to hear. I'm sure they think this is really insane, because and we don't do this individually, because we are language is a collective enterprise, and the language determines the large extent how we think and the distinctions we make. And we live in a world that is divided up in a certain way, and we make certain correlations why things happen and how they happen, and that's the world we navigate through. And that is all fiction, in the sense that it's imaginary. These distinctions aren't real. Now, there's nothing, again, wrong with the distinctions. That is the Leela. That is the play of God. That is a divine play. In fact, the fact that the Leela going on up here is different from the Leela going on in the Amazon is the richness of the divine. It's not some mistake. It's not like these poor people in the Amazon. Well, there's the pre-literate society, and they're still primitive peoples. They haven't, I mean, we have all kinds of stories to even explain all that. But it's all the great unfolding dance. So our problem is a confusion. It's not that we shouldn't be making these distinctions, and we shouldn't have language, and we shouldn't have correlations and relationships and this and that. But we give them a reality they don't have. The technical term is we reify them. And then we're trapped. Instead of enjoying this world, I don't know if you remember as a kid playing cowboys and Indians or something. You you run around, and I'll be the good guy and you'll be the bad guy. Often we used to do it just for movies we recently saw. So we'd go see a movie. I remember Veracruz was a Western, and Burt Lancaster was the bad guy, and Gary Cooper was the good guy. So then me and my friend, he'd be Gary Cooper and I'd be Burt Lancaster, and we'd switch roles, and we'd go around, shoot each other and fall down and all that. And we had a ball. And then, lunchtime, one of our mothers would say, "Hey kids, come on in, it's lunch, got ham sandwiches." Oh, we drop all that, we run in and get ham sandwiches. We had the ability, the freedom to move in these worlds, assume these roles, drop them when it was appropriate, move on. It was wonderful. And we lose that. That's through this reification process. But that is, in that sense, kids know better what's going on than we do instinctively. So never think that the problem is the reification. I mean, never think that the problem is the distinction. It's the reification. It's when we believe that these distinctions are fixed and locked, and this is the way the world really is. And then we get ourselves in a lot of problems. You just look at the cultural and political divisions of how the world should be and how it isn't, and how these people are living in a fucked up world. Excuse my French. And it causes a enormous suffering. Enormous suffering. I don't know if that's speaking to what you're saying, but that the diversity is part of that play. It's part of that. This is it. It includes Democrats and Republicans and communists and capitalists and the whole thing. It even includes Nazis at that level. That doesn't mean that the play shouldn't go on, and that we should all just, okay, well, Nazis are just part of the play, so what? But at the most fundamental level, yes. 1,000 years from now, people are going to say, "Who are these Nazis?" They're going to have their own. We can't imagine. They're going to have their own worlds to deal with. So, in the spiritual path, in a mystical path, the good news from mystics is actually you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have this very life that you have, and with all its heartache, with all its problems, with all its injustices, with all this, hand, you can enjoy it. You can enjoy it as, wow. I mean, who would have ever thought this up? This is incredible. Carol, I think Carol has her hand raised. Carol?
Hello.
Hello, where are you? There she is. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, thought I would try and jump in here. It's
Sure.
a little scary, but because I think part of the obstacle I find is trusting my own, I don't know, authority in what I know or what I experience. It's you know, an ongoing issue that I find. It's been you know, growing up in the 60s or whatever, there was a lot of conditioning around that men had the authority, the final authority, and so that's part of it.
Yeah.
And somewhat too that my experience of awakening does not seem to match what I hear. It seems different than that. It feels like an amalgam of experiences, aspects of what would you call it, of God. I don't know how to of the one, I guess I would say. Like there's knowing, maybe there's only knowing, but then at the same time there's unknowing, not knowing.
Right. Right.
What else? Yeah, and they're just kind of a more of a gradual awakening rather than like a cut and dry kind of like before.
Right.
Yeah. So it feels more like a deepening and opening and more of a development of awakening. And I'm not really describing it very well, more of like a discernment, like being able to tell that this is true, this is false. And
Right. Well, first of all, I think you're right about you know, this business of trusting your own authority, especially in a relative way. That this is one of the you know great aspects of women's liberation is that women are learning to trust the relative authorities, and you know, so you can be a fighter pilot or you know whatever you want to be, and this is you know, and I'm all completely for that. On a absolute or let's say a mystical level, it's I just my experience. It's the opposite. It's having no authority. Now I might sound like I have authority. I know I'm from New York. I've got unlike you. See, I have a conditioning where you grew up male in New York, and you better sound like you have some authority, because you know. You the guy on the block here, and nobody's going to tell you to get off this block, right? So I my conditioning is that, and I sound like I speak like I know what I'm talking about, but I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm going to say next. I really literally don't know what I'm going to say next. It just comes out. So you know whatever you know. I mean, here all these notes, I threw them away. You know, it's whatever's going to happen, no authority. So I think from a spiritual point of view, it's in a certain sense, ultimately giving up authority. That doesn't mean giving up relative authority. Let's not confuse that. But it's ultimately giving up the idea that there's any authority in here other than divine, the great Tao moving through. So now, in terms of how you're describing your path and what's going on with you, you know, I think it is different for you know various people, and some people have a series of insights and Gnostic flashes, and it doesn't all come at once. In fact, probably I'm more of an exception, and even that's not actually true of me. I had some Gnostic flashes on my path, but I think that's probably more the case, that there are deepening insights and whatever. But the real a real authority is you. Are you satisfied? Who cares what other people think about it, whether you're enlightened or not, or is this enlightenment or not? In fact, my favorite story, and most of you have heard it before, but I'll tell it again because I love it. A little Zen students working with a Zen master. This is over in Japan, and he's joined the monastery, and he's been, I don't know, about 5 years, relatively young for a Zen student, and he has Satori, and he wakes up. And so he goes to have an interview with his master, and he describes it to his master. His master looks at him and says, that's not Satori. Go back and meditate. Oh, so he reveres his master. So he goes out and he meditates stuff. But a few days later, he comes back and he asks for an interview with the master. And the master says, come in. And the Zen student comes in. He says, well, if this isn't Satori, you keep your Satori, I'll keep this. Ah, the master bows, see. Because this is it. See, it doesn't matter. A 50-year Zen master, if he tells you you're not enlightened, don't believe him. If you're happy, if you're satisfied, that's all. That makes absolutely no difference what anybody thinks of whether you're enlightened or not.
Well,
Absolutely no difference.
certain experiences, and I have to call them experiences because I don't have another word for it, like, maybe how sound reveals the source. It's
Well,
just
every experience does, actually. But yes, you're right. Certain
Yeah.
experiences do.
and that is absolutely satisfying because it just but then it just kind of fades in and out to satisfaction to dissatisfaction, where the reactivity and getting triggered um, speaks of something completely different. It speaks of being stuck and trapped and like absolutely not enlightened.
Well, okay, this sounds funny, but are you dissatisfied with being dissatisfied?
Well, that kind of stopped the mind, so I don't know how to answer that right now.
Well, see, I get dissatisfied at at a regular level and stuff like that. I did a lot of things, but I'm not dissatisfied about being dissatisfied.
Hmm.
To me, it's actually just as satisfying as when I am satisfied. It's like I never forget this. I went to see my mother. This is after, I think it was the first time after I woke up, and she was living in Mexico and I hadn't seen her for a couple of years. And I went to see her. My brother was there, and we were sitting around, and all the old family dynamics were on display. Do you know what I mean? Here we are. She's in her 80s, and I'm in my 40s. My brother's in his 60s or whatever. We're all old folks almost, and it's like we're kids. And they're all on display, all the dissatisfactions and and it was hilarious. I'm watching a sitcom. I couldn't believe it. And nothing had changed. I mean, it was the same way it was, when we were kids, but it was the perspective had changed. So I don't know. I'm trying to communicate how it's possible to be dissatisfied, but not be dissatisfied with being dissatisfied. Being dissatisfied, part of life. I think I want to have no dissatisfaction. What would you do? That's like being in the Christian heaven, where you go to heaven and you sing hymns, to God. Well, I like some hymns, but for all eternity, you're going to say that would turn into hell for me so quickly. And then you're stuck for all eternity, nothing but blissful hymns to God. That's it.
What about the claim or the, the fist, this should not be.
Which fist is that? I don't know that.
where certain experiences happen and the response is this should not be.
Well, at a relative level, certainly true. At a relative level, we see injustice in the world. We see unnecessary suffering and stuff, and this should not be. And I have no problem, saying that. And with the proviso, from my point of view, always have to put that, like Gandhi said, he said this, the British ruling India, this should not be. And he dedicated his life to undoing that, making it right. But he also said, but I can't be absolutely sure about that. That's why I can't kill, because killing is an absolute act. I can't be absolutely sure about that. I can be as sure as a human being can be, but I can't be absolutely sure. So that this should not be at a relative level. Yes, that's part of the drama. That's part of the thing. That's what makes good movies. The hero or heroine says, faced with injustice, this should not be. And then we go on with the movie and, we enjoy the movie. It says, well, it doesn't matter. This is not, there's no movie. So, yes.
How does that play with the realization of the absolute of truth, that this is actually truth appearing, even though it should not be? How does that play to?
It plays just like it. It plays just like it is playing. That's what I'm trying to say. See, what is going on at the absolute level is the absolute truth. It's and perfect, complete, naught else besides, as Sang San says. And part of that perfection is the struggle for justice, the struggle against what should not be. All that's part of that perfection. It's what gives our human life juice and meaning and all kinds of things. But it works on both sides. See, whatever. If we're talking about justice now, I don't know if there are other things that this should not be. Some that are existential, and a child of 12 dying of leukemia. You want to say this should not be. Well, there are a lot of things at that level where now we're talking Job. Now we're talking. If you got a problem with that, you got to go see the old man directly. This should not be, because it's not a question of human injustice and
You
stuff.
can't undo that.
Yeah. Well, actually, people are working on trying to cure leukemia and stuff. So in that sense, but yes, but there are a lot of things that happen. This should not be. But again, ultimately, they're from a relative perspective. And that is part of realization, is to say, yes, I can say this should, this is the simplest I can do it, express this. This is the relationship between the absolute and the ultimate. Again, there's a Zen story most of you heard before. Zen master, student comes to him, or they're in front of a whole bunch of people. He's in front of a whole bunch of students, his congregation, and a new student comes and says, "Is it true that that ultimately there's no right and there's no wrong?" And the Zen master says, "Yes, ultimately it's true. There's no right and there's no wrong. Nevertheless, right is right and wrong is wrong." Now, that really, to me, sums it up. It's a contradiction. The mind can't understand that. That's why realization transcends the thinking mind, the dualistic mind. The dualistic mind can't unpack that. But that is the insight that cuts through the dualism. That kind of teaching. That kind of teaching means, yes, you live your life and there's right and there's wrong. And yet, ultimately, right and wrong are dualistic distinctions. And both are true at the same time. That is what's before us in all its perfection, complete. And there's naught besides.
I mean, there's another obstacle that this is happening to me.
What is that?
Just experience that this is happening to a me.
Oh, well, again, it depends on how you're using the me. If you recognize the me is a a character in a story, just like I or me, whatever, then it's not a problem. If you think there really is a me that is the reference of the word me, and that is really happening to me, that's like it's like you have a dream, and in the dream, a monster's chasing you. In a dream, you think this is really happening to me, and then you wake up, and the me that was being chased and the monster, and they weren't. So so the experience while you're dreaming is very real, and it's suffering, and it's it's not to be laughed at or poo-pooed. But the solution to being chased by a monster in a dream is to realize the true nature of what you're experiencing. And then you might even enjoy being chased by a monster. We go to movies because to see monsters chase people, because we know it's not really me, but nevertheless we identify with the character. We go, don't go into that basement. Oh no, don't go down there. We've seen the alien creep into the basement. And then says, I thought I heard something there, especially if it's a young, vulnerable woman. Oh, I'll take a flashlight and go look down there and see what's going on. No, don't go in the basement. No, we enjoy all that, don't we? Because we know it's not, and we won't enjoy it unless in some level, do identify with the woman who's going to go in the basement. We feel for her. No, don't go in the basement. We have to do that. But we know it's ultimately not me. And the question is, I think we're back to who am I really? Is that, Carol? Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the meaning of your life, is to find that out. But who are you then? Who are you? That you're back to that question. You're been a disciple of Ramana's since when? So there you go. This is your koan. This is your koan. And don't get frustrated or disappointed. This gives you, this is your North Star in life. Who am I? Who am I? And the way we answer, we do everything we can, and it doesn't get answered. And you described how you've had these insights, you've had these experiences, you've had huge times of satisfaction, dissatisfaction, and all that. But then the question is, well, who is having all this experience? The satisfaction and the dissatisfaction and the whole mashugana, who's it happening to? That's the single question. And the thinking mind is never going to answer. Remember what Lady Soigel said. Ignorance. Look into ignorance. Not look into the teachings. Not look into your own. Who am I? It's coming out of ignorance. That question. So where's it coming from? What is that ignorance that's coming from? That's the key.
Why do you say that the question comes out of ignorance?
Well, we don't ask questions about things we know about. You're ignorant of who you are, right?
Well, it's kind of a yes and no kind of thing. When I ask that question, there's knowing. It's not like a true knowing, truth.
Okay, but you're the one who just asked the question. Who's me?
But then there's also a not knowing.
Yes. Okay. Well, look into the not knowing. What happens when there's not knowing? What's going on there? That's ignorance, right?
Yeah, it's kind of nothing.
Yes, that's exactly what Lady Soyo's talking about. Look into that. Look into that. That's how does she describe it? Oh, I don't have that before me. Dynamic space, where everything that arises is pure. Because we don't know. Because we don't know what's going on. It's pure. There's no, we don't know. There's no labeling it. There's no saying, oh, it's this, it's that, it did, that. Not good, it's not bad, it's not satisfying, dissatisfying. My mind, I don't know. So what happens when we experience without knowing? Look into it. Look into it. Don't take my word for it. You look into it. UFO. Thank you, Wesley, for that wonderful slogan. UFO. You find out. Okay, then I'm going to have just to give you some closing things here. First of all, this is what a spiritual path is about. We take a teaching like, this is it, what's before you, there's nothing else besides, and you take a teaching like that, and this is considered one of high teachings. These are highest teachings. They seem to indicate you don't have to do any practice, you don't have to do anything like that. Don't be confused about that. Teachings are stage specific. So these are actually for people who are very advanced on the path. If you are confused about that, I wrote an article called "To Practice or Not to Practice." You can just Google it with quotes around it, and it'll pop right up. It'll take you right to it, and that'll give you my view of the relationship of practice. These kinds of teachings, high teachings, and other teachings, more practical. But they are, even if you're just probably not so helpful in the very beginning, but even if you're a little bit along the path, to run into these teachings, and you will, can be very valuable because you can take them as a challenge. Okay, this Sen says this is it, what's before me, and how come then I don't see it? So what is the obstacle? So it helps us identify the obstacle, and this is actually what a path is about. A path is not about gaining more and more. It's not about really gaining anything. It's already here. You are already that. That's something really important to remember. The paradise that you want to enter is already here. You're sitting in it. The question is, something is preventing you from realizing it, or a series of things, mostly because our stories are quite complex. Our ego structures are dynamics, they're very complex. So we identify, and this is different for different people. We identify, oh, this is my obstacle. Okay, let me look at that. Let me see how I can work through that and that. And we ditch these obstacles slowly sometimes quickly, more quickly. That everybody's path goes at a different pace. And we're getting rid of the veils. We're unveiling, and then nobody knows exactly when, but ultimately you come to a veil, and that veil falls away, and that's it. That was the last veil. You might have veils fall away, and you get a glimpse, and then another veil drops down a little bit, and whatnot. So I don't mean to oversimplify it, but it's a question of unveiling, not a question of accumulating anything. So that's why it's important. It's also these highest teachings. By the way, some traditions, they actually try not to make them available unless you have you've moved along on your path a certain way. In the Tibetan tradition, there are certain teachings you don't get until you've gotten certain empowerments. Means you're at a certain stage, and so you might run across the Tibetan book, and in the beginning it says this is restricted to people who've had I don't know, the 4-horse empowerment or something. And, we try to honor that. But I must say, in the age of the internet, I think the horse is way out of the barn. It's a little late to be trying to close the barn door. But they also, in my case anyway, they can motivate you. When I was a young man, late teens, early 20s, and I stumbled on Zen, and I did a little Zen practice, and I went to some Zen seminars and so forth. and I read some Zen koans, which are, they're crazy. They don't make any sense. But I knew that there was some secret here. I just knew it. They spoke to me at a really deep level. And that motivated me to look into it. These crazy Zen masters say these things that don't make any sense, but I know that they're communicating, pointing to the truth. And it was something I wanted to know, the truth that I wanted to know. So you run across these high teachings, let them motivate you. Say, look, there's something here. I don't understand. I don't get it. What are they talking about? That's good. That's right. And then let that work on you. Let that get into your soul. And at least it did for me. I don't know. I got distracted for, another 20 years. And then I came back to it all after I tried to become happy in a worldly way. And all that didn't work out. So I had that as a background to come back to. So let me leave you with a little last words, a little story, which illustrates what we talked about in a little bit more, perhaps amusing way, lighter way. This is a story about Rabia, who was an 8th century Sufi. And she's Rabia from Basra. So she was living in Basra, which is in present day Iraq. And it was a hot summer night. And hot summer nights in Basra, they didn't have air conditioning back in the 8th century. So everybody goes up on their roofs trying to catch a little breeze blowing in off the Persian Gulf or whatever. And they're all up on their roofs, and she's up there, and the next roof over, there's this very pious guy praying, and he's saying, "Oh Lord, open the door that I may come to you. Oh Lord, open the door that I may come to you. Oh Lord, open the door that I may come to you." And he's going on and on like this all night long. And Rabia is trying to get a little sleep and this and that. And finally, she looks over and says, "Oh, idiot, the door is not shut." So you can ponder that teaching. And until we see you again, peace to you all.